Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Vice Chair.
I'll switch mine around.
Mine still says Chair.
I think there's a default setting that that maybe our dear Carrie Hinton set up for us at some point.
Oh, yeah, I think if you change it during the meeting, it goes back. So,
yeah.
Well,
don't go too wild when you change your name, though, okay?
see. No, we match.
Chaos.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
Okay. Do we have county council? Anybody joining us, do you think?
We have county council on standby if needed, if there's questions, but otherwise I think we're all here.
Okay, sounds good. Well, it's 10 o'clock, 10:01 now. So we are going to, I'm going to call the Yamaha County Board of Commissioners formal informal session to order. This is February 3rd, 2022. And Commissioner Starrett, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to calendar session. Commissioners, I don't have anything other than AOC meetings, which are aplenty, but they are already noticed, I believe. So do you have anything else to add to the joint calendar?
We do have Provoking Hope coming up this weekend, but I believe that was noted last week.
Yes. Okay.
Before we move on from calendaring, I did receive a request from the City of Newburgh, Doug Rux at City of Newburgh. Again, they are working on a proposed urban renewal program, and they've starting the confer and consult process. And they would like to have an opportunity to come and present on February 24th. And just wanted to check with the board if you're okay with us go ahead and penciling that in as either a work session or an agenda item. I haven't figured out quite which would be the most appropriate to fit that in.
Okay, works for me. We don't have anything major that day that you can see for other work sessions. Okay.
No, and then we also, like the last time we did this confer and consult process, we also kind of checked two boxes. There was both the confer and consult with the Board of Commissioners, but then also to confer and consult with the executive board for the extension service as well. So we'll also reach out to OSU Extension and make sure it's on Kelly's radar as well. And so we can take care of both of those.
Okay. The other thing I did want to bring up is scheduling the second strategic planning session. I think we should probably get that at least on the books. Ken, do you have any ideas for that?
I don't at this time, because I actually had a note that I was going to bring up during, just as a reminder. I think where we left things last time is I believe commissioners were going to email me the top priorities or those goals. And I think I'm still pending responses. So as far as the next step, I was going to remind, if you could send me a quick email with those, and then I can circle back with John Morgan, and then we can get some dates on the calendar moving forward.
Okay. Let's see, that takes us to public comment. We did receive public comment, quite a bit of it. So thank you for that. We've reviewed that. And moving on to department updates. And I believe this is the first department update I have ever experienced in the past year. So this is very exciting. And we have Derek Wharf, who is our county assessor, joining us. And he is the tax collector that we all like. But I don't see him.
To be fair, it's the only tax collector I've really ever known.
Yeah. There he is. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Derek.
How about that, Mary? I know you like my virtual backgrounds.
No, I think you can do better than that because I've seen some of them, Derek.
Where's that? I don't even
That's
know where
room
that is.
32.
Not anymore. It
Used to
looks it looks completely different now. I would well maybe it does. I don't know. I haven't been in there either. Thank you, Chair and board. It has been a while. And I am thankful to have the opportunity to provide this update. Today I'll go through our 3 core businesses. I've been gently reminded from our county administrator that I'm going to keep this to a reasonable timeline of 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to hit my start on my timer over here. There it goes. So we got 3 core businesses I want to give you updates on, and the appraisal team, our tax side, our GIS cartography, which I tend to simplify as mapping, but Brian, our cartographer, has proven and has reminded me numerous times that it is significantly more than drawings. He does a lot of work with GIS and getting information out to the public for those purposes. So again, thank you. And to start, I would like to share with you guys, periodically we review our mission statement as a team. And after our strategic planning in January, we had conference. We just sort of affirmed this. And our mission statement as it sits today is to provide the citizens of Yamhill County with an accurate, effective, fair, and equitable property tax program by a team that is driven with a passion to exceed the expectations of the citizens we serve. And I share that because we have delivered on that promise. There have been notable hurdles and obstacles over the last 2-3 years. Outside of COVID, there's also been legislative issues, wildfires, firestorms. We had more states of emergency declared, I think, last year than any, probably the last 100 years combined, maybe, I don't know. So to that end, our team's done a really good job of stepping up during troubling times and continuing to deliver service as scheduled. We were open for the entirety of 2021, open to the public and providing all services as scheduled. So I know that not all offices were able to do that, but I'm thankful we were. I want to give kudos to my frontline personnel, Kimberly Navarro, Megan Gaunt, Roxanne Henderson, Jordan Akins, led by Patty Lensadell and Eileen Slater. That's the front of the house that the folks see when they walk in the door. And that group does an amazing job of providing excellent customer service, educating, and serving folks as they come through our front door. So I'm thankful that we were able to do that and keep services running. So to start with the appraisal side, excuse me, January 1st of every year marks the assessment date for all real property. So these are the values that we'll use when we turn the tax roll for 22-23. So right now our appraisers are in the field and they're looking at new construction for the year. This year we're going to complete somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,500 permits, and the preliminary numbers on those permits indicate an increase of real market value in the somewhere in the range of 400 million. So that'll be a lot of work over the next. It actually started in late November because we really have to hover around that 1st of January date, and it'll wrap up probably in April, 1st of April. The initial market trends are showing another solid year of increases. Residential is up another 10%, and they've averaged 10% over 5 years. So if you compound that 10% annually, you're looking like a 48, 53% increase, something along those lines for the residential sector of our real market values. A home that was 240,000 is now 370,000. So that upward pressure is not subsiding. And while we might see a softening in the market going into 2022 as the Feds change rates, and Treasurer Bledsoe made some comments about that also, our assessment date is the 1st of January. So again, the 1st of January, the market was strong. In addition to residential being up, multifamily with pressure on housing, multifamily is up another 10 or 15%. And we see commercial industrial properties up 2 to 5%. So this next piece, I'm really excited to share. You know, you guys have heard me, those who've been here this long, and Lindsay, welcome to this, my rant, if you will, on reappraisal of county property. But since 2016, I've been raising a concern that the county hasn't done a systematic reappraisal of the county for 25 years. There was some legislation that passed in the late 90s that cut the appraisal staff drastically, and reappraisal meaning going to every property on some sort of cycle to see what's there, what is gone, what is new, what's the condition, hadn't been done in, like I said, 25 years. So with the support of the board and the acquisition of new technology, we overhauled our business process and started a countywide reappraisal effort in 2018-19. And before I get into the numbers, here's another team I want to thank. The flexibility, the adaptability of this team to take on new software, new business process, completely reinvent the whole thing in order to get this reappraisal done. I want to give thanks to Susan DeBolt, Missy Akers, Sandra Van Bergen, Norm Olson, John Hockman, Samantha Williams, Carrie Warden, and Sean Beaton. This team made it a priority and a reality. And the team is led by Jay Moskal, our chief appraiser, who drafted the plan, worked through the software development, the hardware development, got them in the field, got it going, and now the flywheel's in motion. So over the last 4 appraisal cycles, we've reappraised all of urban residential, that's 22,000 accounts. We've reappraised all multifamily and manufactured home parks. That's another 2,500 accounts. We have 50% of the rural residential done. That's another 7,250 accounts, and 65% of commercial and industrial is done, and that's another 1,500 accounts. So we're continuing to do what we were doing. We kept all of the work that we were doing between, let's call it the late 90s through 2018, all the new construction, all the processes that needed to be completed. And then we added reappraisal, and we were able to do that without adding staff because of the new technology and the rewrite of our business practices. So significant wins for the county, huge savings in labor and time, and that's a win for everyone. All right, I'm at 6 minutes. I have time here. So this part was going to be optional based on my clock. Appeals for the year. So right now, if you don't know, is the appeal season. We got our appeals, they were due by December 31st. And then we start working them for the tax year. We have 10 Board of Property Tax Appeals. That's the local appeal. 7 of those are for real property. 3 of those are for fee waivers that we don't have jurisdiction over. Somebody who files late or has a penalty from the Department of Revenue, they can appeal locally. The 7 are the ones that are our responsibility. And that's a win. And I say that because as a point of comparison, 2016, we had 60 appeals, and 2012, when I started, we probably had 150 or 200 appeals. So I'd like to say that's all just the result of a better appraisal program, but some of that has to do with market increases tend to, they tend to have fewer appeals because everyone's sort of aware that the market is increasing, and that is associated with value increases, and we have less appeals. But in any event, we're at 7 for the year, and that's a great number for us. We do have a couple of appeals in the Oregon Tax Court. They're scheduled for trial. I'm very excited to hear about Christian's new ad. She comes with experience in county government already, and specifically property tax appeals from Lynn County. So we met with them and talked about what we have and where maybe we can collaborate on getting some of those over the final finish line. And knock on wood, we don't have any new to add to the pile. These are trials that have been on the books for a while. So appeals appear to be in check. The tax office, so up front, we've collected 141 million out of 145-ish. About 91% of the taxes levied for 2022. The tax base in Yamhill County and all of the two major populated areas, Mac and Newburgh, they're very strong. You know, we've got collection rates that will by the end of the year be above 95, maybe 97%, and that is that's that's great. And it's been historically 95, 97, so they're holding strong, and all the districts are thankful for that. The next two remaining tax payments, we have February 15th is the second installment, which is coming up in just a couple of days, and then May 15th is the final for the 2022 tax year.
Derek,
Yes.
just for comparison real quick, when we went through the last recession around 2008-9, that kind of area, what was our collection rate?
We held high again. We were still at 95 and above.
Okay.
It's a testament to the stability and the reliability of the folks of Yamhill County. Other counties, specifically outside of Metro and Eastern, they really dipped. They had some challenges, but we've held strong. So our collection rate has been solid. And if you think of it in terms of, I report 95, 97% on the current year taxes are due. If we look at how much we collect before we foreclose on a property, so 4 years delinquent taxes plus a couple years of opportunity to recoup it, it's a fraction of a percent. So we actually collect 99.95% before anything gets foreclosed on. So even that 5% we don't get initially, people tend to be able to make that payment before they lose property. So good news there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. The other thing I wanted to share, excuse me, we've developed some forecasting models. One of the things that I wanted to do after taking office, and it's been developed over a couple of years, is to assist districts and jurisdictions with forecasting their tax revenue for the coming year. And much like ourselves, they're in budget season now. And we've turned the roll and we have an idea of what next year is going to look like. So without going into the depths of the model, I can tell you that we're forecasting somewhere between 4.25% and 5% increase in the taxes levied from 22 to 2023. And that'll be based on the real market values and assessed values that are the product of that as of January 1st, 2022. So all that to say, the market's strong, collection is strong, the market's strong. I definitely don't see any downward turn or flattening for this current coming year that will get us through 2023. Mapping. So mapping our GIS cartography. Brian Hansberry, who is our cartographer, he is working with Jeff Ivey and Ken Friday in the planning department on getting us current on the software we already have. So we've purchased some software and have had it for a while, but we're sort of using the backward version of it until we can get everybody ready to sort of move to the next version. And we're getting some, I'll call it pressure from OGIC, the Oregon Geographic Information Council, that they're changing the framework data requirements for GIS and cartography maps. So in order just to be ready for that and make sure that we're ahead of anything that gets sunset in terms of software for ArcGIS, Brian is working on getting us to what's called an enterprise server environment. And it's a collaborative effort with the planning department, the new surveyor, Ken, Huffer and Justin are helping from admin and kind of coordinating some things on that end. So that is a to-do coming up. And let's go from there. I want to touch quickly on personnel. Currently have 2 positions open. One position is for an appraiser 3 that we've had open, and we're challenged with getting applicants. It's our highest level appraiser. Probably one of the more competitive positions in the state, considering our proximity to Metro and the Department of Revenue. It's going to take somebody who really is a fit for this region. They're going to want to be working and living or something like that in this region. Something's going to draw them to us, and we're hopeful that happens. The current economic conditions may spur that. We've got that position out now, in addition to a assessment specialist 3. Most of you know Jordan Akins was our special assessment director, if you will. She was the one responsible for reviewing all of the property in farm and forest deferral, and we did complete a complete audit of all properties. It took us 3 years, but we got it done. She was successfully recruited by the Department of Revenue, but she left us in a really good place. she's got a great she left it. So the program is stable. The program's ready to be maintained instead of developed. Policies and procedures are in place. And my hope is that our next person filling in that position will just keep it going and up to date current so that we don't get as far as behind as we were when she took over the first time. So 2 open positions. Finally, budget. It's all about budget in the coming weeks. We have similar issues this year with last 2 years. Revenues are flat, maybe slightly down on the CAFA grant. Personnel expenses are notably exceeding the initial discretionary allocation. So our team is going to go through and try to find where we can get an initial balanced budget, but know that most likely it's given the composition of our budget and 85-87% personnel, we're going to be looking at that. So all about budget right now. See, I'm at 14 minutes and 52 seconds. So well under the 15-minute mark, Ken. I hope you appreciate that. There's a lot of information, you guys. I try to send out summaries. You know, I sent out a tax publication summary and some other information. There's stuff on our website. If you or anybody gets a hold of you, citizens, organizations that has questions, forecasting, any sort of historical numbers, data, we're always here to help. And we've got great analysts on board and a great staff to help those who have questions. So we encourage all those and welcome any of those from you or constituents. So with that, you can shoo me off stage or I'm open for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Derek. I want to say how much I appreciate your staff. I've always told you this, that there's a real esprit de corps over there. It, I think, has to do with the way you've managed that office. So it's always fun to see what you guys are up to. Thank you for that. And I really want to especially thank you for working with us to get that information out to people who are in jeopardy of losing their properties to tax foreclosure. I know when we came to you, you were very agreeable, sent out those notices to people, and hearing from the Housing Authority how many people are actually enrolled in their foreclosure avoidance program as a result of that is really encouraging, because those people get to stay in their homes. So thank you for doing that. And the other thing is that hopefully we can work together to get rid of the business property tax at the legislative level, because even though it is the oldest tax in the state of Oregon, I think it's patently unfair to make people pay taxes on stuff they've already bought. But that's my editorial rant for the day. But thank you for what you do. And you're the poster child for why we need some kind of county newsletter to let people know when someone shows up at their property, you know, what it's all about and how to work with them. It can be a little jarring. And also to let people know about how much of their property taxes actually go to the county and how many go to the taxing district. So you will be the poster child I use to promote that. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm ready.
Thank you, Commissioner. Derek, I have a quick question. When you mentioned the forest and farm deferral process and the audits, is that something that you guys cycle through on a consistent basis, or was that just not being done and then you had an opportunity to do it and it took you 3 years?
Yeah, so again, holistically, it hadn't been done since the 70s, maybe even sooner than that. When there was initially some zoning allowances that started the program. So the effort was to, in a sense, clean up the inventory, you know, figure out what we had in, out, property. A significant amount of properties had transitioned from, say, forest to vineyard, or from forest to farm, or farm to forest. And so the initial run was get everybody on board with, one, do you know what program you're in? There's an alarming number of folks who didn't even realize they were in a program, but a great opportunity to educate and say, okay, you're in this program. Now that you're here, do you want to be in this one? Do you want to be in a different one? How can we help you get there? But at this point, it's more of a maintenance program now. So what we'll be doing is we'll be looking systematically over maybe a 5-year period to ensure that those we've already touched get touched again within maybe 5 years instead of 20. A lot of it's done with aerial imagery. With that flyover, we're able to see that a farm is still a farm. We don't have to really drive out to the middle of nowhere to see that trees are planted. We know what vineyards look like from the sky, so we don't have to really do that. So a lot of effort is sort of a lot of labor is mitigated by using just aerial imagery to scan things, but it'll be an ongoing maintenance. Exemptions are the same thing. I didn't really have time to touch on exemptions today, but we did a very similar thing in terms of lining up all of our exemption programs and then going through systematically and saying, do they still qualify? Are they still the same owners? Did this church turn into a warehouse? Did this warehouse turn into a church? So on and so forth. So those two programs will be an ongoing maintenance after the initial, holistic approach is completed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kula.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Derek. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
As Commissioner Starrett, I almost called you Chair, knows from back in the day when we were in person, we always had a gentleman come in and argue for not having manufactured homes and trailers count as personal property, but instead as real property. And I didn't understand the situation. You helped me understand it, Christian. But I organized a housing and shelter tour, like 3 of them recently. And I was at a property that's cooperatively owned. And the folks at CASA, Oregon, were explaining that in some counties, the assessor either chooses to assess it as real property, or actually says, well, because this is such a small amount, we're actually waiving it. And I apologize, I should have just checked in with you beforehand, but maybe a conversation in the future would be, what does it look like for the county's finances to do that? Because as you know, some of these properties are among our lowest income residents who own homes.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Kula, and I've advocated for that program for Yamhill County. The challenge right now is that the legislation is written with a population cap. So it applies to counties with populations, I believe it's over 300,000. So they were looking for Metro and Lane, maybe Deschutes at this point. And they are allowed to just not tax manufactured homes that are, I think it's 35,000 or less. My effort to pursue that sort of dwindled when manufactured home prices are now they're trending higher than real stick homes, just because it's affordable housing at this point. So what was a $40,000 manufactured home is now $100,000. So that bottom line has moved so far that we really need to address it less from a dollar standpoint and more from are they personal property or not. But I do agree that there's an opportunity to look at that improvement segment and maybe provide some assistance if that's the way policy goes.
Okay, that's.
But right now it's a legislative thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for bringing it up. It adds to my to-do list.
There you go.
All right. Any further? Oh, Commissioner Starrett.
And thank you for that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that question, Commissioner Kula, because having sat through the testimony from individuals who were affected by that, it was pretty heartbreaking. I remember going to Christian and saying, how is this possible? There were a number of different court cases and decisions that this was being taxed the way it was. And it was a significant difference between personal property and real property. And when we look at the number of programs that are out there for rehabbing mobile homes, manufactured homes, and we see what state of disrepair they're in, these are, the people who can least afford to pay taxes based on what they are. So I would advocate for that, because that isn't affordable and continues to be an option, and we're making it impossible for them in that regard. So I would love to see that happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Starrett. And as fodder for the fire, we have a significant amount of manufactured homes. When I look at other metro counties, we compare to some of them. So, at 3,500 manufactured homes, it would be a significant shift. So if the policy went that way administratively from my end, I wouldn't be assessing, appraising, taxing. There's a labor component to all that. So maybe that helps you with your plight.
Great discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Derek, did you have anything further?
I just want to thank the board for your continued support, Ken and the admin team. Patricia Rojas has been wonderful to work with. and looking forward to going forward with that. No, I'm good. We're good. And we'll let you know if something comes up.
Great. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
All right. You too.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so that takes us to our work session, item F. There are no work sessions scheduled today. G, consent agenda. We have none on the consent agenda. That brings us to old business, item H1, consideration of a letter regarding agricultural overtime mandate legislative proposal. And this was something that was continued from January 27th of 2022. This is something that I've added to the agenda. Really in response to some farmers that live in our county that came forward with concerns about this particular legislation. It was a proposal at the time. Now I believe it's House Bill 4002. So if commissioners, I am going to ask again to move this to next week, just because I want a little bit more time to, I've started my letter. I want a little bit more time to tweak it. But now that we have an actual bill, it's House Bill 4002. If you want to review that, I did check this morning. There are no scheduled committee meetings yet, so I think we're good on talking about it next week. But essentially, it's regarding agricultural overtime, and as you know, agriculture in Oregon and many other states is exempt from federal overtime. Well, not just federal overtime, but overtime in general. And so this bill would mandate overtime over 40 hours for farm workers. And there's a lot of legitimate concern about that. And it's been brought forward by some farmers in our county. So I will have that letter to you, I promise, before the end of the week. And then we can talk about that next week, if that's okay.
Chair, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
I will say that full disclosure, potential conflict of interest declaration, since I am a farmer, and this would could lead to my financial detriment, I believe is the language. But I look forward to that conversation. I'm inclined to as you might imagine, have overtime, but have a longer transition. Right now it's like there's a short transition and then a short small tax credit. So I'd be happy to have the conversation. I'm trying to listen to, Farm Bureau and other farm organizations and farm workers. So, and I actually have the link to the Farm Bureau, well, the study that was commissioned, and it might not be something that needs to go in the packet because it's 186 pages, but it's worth your read. And so I'll just make sure that if you haven't seen it, I'll get it to you.
Yeah, that sounds great. And obviously my husband is a farmer too, so it could be a conflict there in terms of his business and the detriment to the business. But I think that it's hard because overtime, nobody's going to disagree with overtime. We all want to be paid for the time that we work. And, as a county, we do offer incentives for people who do work longer hours. And so it's not a bad thing. It's just the process by which they're going about it. And I have significant concerns that we're sort of shoving this huge policy into a short session, and the building is closed. The legislators don't even need to show up on a daily basis. I mean, it just seems like, wow, this is something that really should be given some time and thought, and at the very least, robust opportunity for the public to weigh in. So, but I'll have that letter to you in the packet before the end of the week, and then we can move that to next week. Okay.
By that time, I'll probably have my own comments that I'll submit to the record. And so there'll be time for some nuance or not nuance.
Okay, perfect. So that brings us to, I think that's all of the old business. So now we're moving on to other business. Item I1, which is consideration of approval of intergovernmental agreement number 171448 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority for tort liability coverage retroactive to July 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2023. If there's no discussion on this particular item, I will move approval or ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Starrett. Okay, a motion to approve I-1. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Item I-2 is consideration of approval of grant agreement number VS-0164 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs for veteran services in the amount of $30,720 retroactive to January 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2023. Commissioner Starrett.
Thank you, Chair. I would just, we've all had a chance to look at the information in the packet, and it's to remove barriers to renting. And it's also to help with veterans in more rural areas with gas cards to help them make appointments and different things like that. So I would move approval of item I-2.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion for approval of item I-2. Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item I-3, consideration of approval of the Public Works Capital Improvement Project List for 2022 through 2023. And
Yeah.
Ken, did you want to kick us off on this discussion?
Yes, and I'm going to ask that Mark Lago be promoted. And
Perfect.
so Mark's going to join. He's in the process of joining right now. Here he comes. And I believe he has a presentation that's part of the request too, so he can give an update on what's being proposed for the capital improvement list for 22-23. And there's Mark.
Welcome, Mark.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Okay, I guess I'll go to share screen for a presentation. All right, do you all see the screen?
I do.
All right, so again, thank you, Board, for allowing me to be on the agenda to talk about the 22-23 capital improvement projects. So I'd like to just recap a little bit from last year, which will give a little background for what we're doing this year. So last year we had capital asset pavement management systems actually evaluate all our county paved roads, which developed a 5-year maintenance plan. And just to recap, CIP's capital improvement plans really is part of a bigger thing. Well, actually just that CAPS is the overlays, chip seals, and crack seals. No bridges are involved in that at this time. So the philosophy behind the pavement management system was to keep good roads good. So in other words, you have a road that's maybe paved 15 years ago, put another wearing surface on top of that, which would be chip seal. So you're actually extending the life of that road, and it costs less to do many miles of that versus reconstruction of a whole new road, which you'll get to that at some point, but you're trying to use stretch your dollar as much as you can. So the goal was to keep the pavement condition index at 76. Pavement condition index is basically a way to rate our roads. Of course, 100 is the best. Most jurisdictions shoot for 80, which is very tough because of funding, and the county is actually at 76 right now. So the goal was to maintain that 76 over a 5-year period, which would cost $2.7 million per year. So this breaks out to $2 million for overlays and $700,000 for chip seals, crack seals, which is also what we call preventative maintenance. So last year, the county did 33 lane miles of overlays and 42 lane miles of preventive maintenance, which was crack seals and chip seals. So now we go to bridges. Well, be straight up, we didn't make much headway on contract bridges, but the public works crew did several bridge repairs that we were able to do. So I did spend a lot of time and review and approve process to try to develop a standard request for proposal with county counsel's office, which we have now. It's a catch-all for for anything we basically do, not just bridges as well as some roads. So with that catch-all RFP, we actually went through the RFP process to hire David Evans and Associates to design Deer Creek Park Road Bridge, which, by the way, we do have 30% plans at this point, and we're looking at constructing that in September, October timeframe. So we also started hiring smaller engineering firms to help with small designs. Basically, move this here. Anyway, out of steel. So it basically meant that we would, basically some things are deteriorating out of wood. So instead of putting wood back into place, actually do steel. And that way we extend the useful life 50 to even 75 plus years. So we're in the process of doing that in any of the repairs we do, which of course would beams, columns, and head walls. So now on to basically the 2022-23 CIP projects. Again, that is overlays, chip seals, and bridges. So overlays. This year, we're going to take a 1-year pause. And there's 2 reasons for the 1-year pause. The first reason is there's several roads that were paved between 2015, and 2019 that are showing base failure. Albertson is one of those roads, but we're going to try to do Albertson this year. But anyway, the base is failing. It's, if you've gone up and down Albertson, you know there's lots of cracks, a lot of alligatoring. The road is actually just falling apart. So with Albertson and these other roads, we're going to be doing what's called the full depth repair, which basically means we take a huge rototiller and we till up the asphalt, the base, the gravel, we add cement, we add water, we compact it, we make it a very solid base. And then after that, we actually put a very solid level of asphalt on top. Normally we would put 2, but within these full depth repairs, we'll put a total of probably 4 to possibly 4.5 inches on that. So these FDR roads will actually take the place of the overlays in this year's CIPs. So the second reason is actually public works crews need time to prepare for these overlays and chip seal projects. And that means that the year prior, we get our crews out there to do some of the preventative maintenance work on there and get them ready. So ditching, we'll ditch out to both sides of the roads. And we'll trim the trees and the vegetation. We'll clean, repair, and the culverts. And with that, we're looking at possibly some of the larger culverts, actually contracting that work out. We're talking 4 feet in diameter and greater. And then maybe even see where we're at with ditching on those roads and possibly contract out ditching. We also need to do possible spot-based repair. And then, of course, you have, I can't see quite the other one on there, but Jimmy. So, my bad, I'm all out of work. So anyway, so with that, here's where we have a diagram, a map showing where those repairs will happen. Albertson, we're going to try to do before July 1. There's a chance we might not be able to get all our ducks in a row for that. But we have areas identified. If you've been up and down that road, you'll see white marks. Well, we actually found out we could start and stop as we went down, which would cost $800,000, or we could do top to bottom for an additional $200,000 and have the road solid from top to bottom doing our full FDR. So on our upper left, we actually have Crocodile Road. I never say that word right, sorry. Warden Hill and Irwood, and of course Star Quarry are some of those are the roads we're looking at doing the full depth repair. So here's a breakout of those 4 roads. And you can see it's about $500,000 there. Normally we would actually do roughly $1 million to $2 million in overlays. So, but this is going to take a lot of time and road to get all the ducks in a row, as well as get a contractor on board, possibly maybe even bundling these 4 to get a better price from a contractor. So looking ahead, so what's this really do with our pavement condition index? You know, we were trying to stick with 76 over the next 5 years. So it's only going to drop 1 point. So what you see here is an output that I have called Street Saver, which actually it's the input and output from the capital asset pavement management systems for a pavement management system. So I can put different scenarios in there with different ratings, different budget numbers. I personally want to see what would happen to our PCI over a 5-year period if we did no asphalt overlay projects. So as you see here, year 2022 budget is 750,000, and I have PM, which is 100%. So basically, I'm telling the software, don't give me any roads, asphalt roads in that year. Just give me chip seals and crack seals. And then you move to year 23 through 2026, and I have 2.8 million in there with 25% preventive maintenance. So 25% of 2.8 is roughly about 750,000. So then you go down the chart below and you can see, I think it's the third column over. We started with a PCI 76. By the end of 26, we've only gone down 1 point, which is very good for the county roads. Again, 80 is where you try to shoot to, 75 is great. Additionally, what we've done to try to save some time as well as mobilization costs, so when I make these runs, I also can go through and it tells me what road we're going to be doing what year. We've actually combined the chip seal roads for 22 and 23, and we divided them into a north and south section. That way we're not bouncing to one part of the county and bouncing to the other side. Again, to save a lot of time and mobilization costs. We will also do the same thing when we start looking at our overlay projects for 23, 24, create a north and a south section. So here's a map that shows our 22 chip seal projects, and this is pretty much the north section of the county. Quite a bit of roads. I believe it's 24 miles. So there'll be a lot of work to be done. This will be done in August, late August timeframe. We need it very hot so we can get in there and get it done. For example, I think we did 24 miles this past year, and the company we hired actually did everything within 4 to 5 days. So it's a very short turnaround. So here's a list of all those roads. I want to point out item 22 there, which is also item 1 in the column below. All of the street is actually in the city of Yamhill. So we're going to actually put down a fog seal, a seal coat down on it first, and then put a layer of chip on that, or chip seal we call. We're going to use a little different, smaller diameter rock on there. The reason we're kind of getting a double layer on there is because that road is a city road, but also a lot of agriculture uses that road. So we want to give it a good wearing surface that can last a long time as well. So when you look at the end of that, that's almost 24 miles. We're looking at doing, by the way, that's lane miles. Lane miles would actually be double that, my bad. And then so you're looking at 696,000 and some change to do crack and fog seals, which would be 22, which would be in the 22-23 budget. So moving on to bridges. Hope you can kind of see the color code we try to put on there. Green is replacing a bridge completely. Tan is a substructure, which is a cap and a pile, which is beams and columns. And then orange is the back walls. Back walls is that portion that holds back the soil from falling back in onto the creek or the river. And you can see here we have a list. So number 1 there is Gopher Valley. We're able to use that catch-all RFP that we've worked with County Council to get that out for engineering. And you'll see there's nothing in there for construction. That doesn't mean we want to do construction, but with bridge work, you're limited to be doing the work in a water work window, which is 15th of July to the 15th of October. So everything's got to be planned around those months to do any work in the water, which can prevent its own challenges. Number 2 there is actually Turner Creek over Pike Road. That bridge only really needs painting because we're having some decay on the steel pans and beams. Well, the interesting part of that, we found that it costs more to sandblast it because, you know, we want any of that lead-based paint getting into our waterways. So basically put a big bubble over the bridge, you sandblast everything, you have big vacuums that are sucking all that debris and putting into totes, and it's deposited properly in an environmental area. Well, we found out it's actually cheaper to build a whole new bridge off-site, truck it in and drop it in. So we're always looking at the best way to spend our county dollars on our bridges as well as our roads and our chip seals. So then if you go down to number 4, that's Panther Creek there. That's a project, I'm pointing this one out because we've had a small engineering company help us out with some repairs, some engineering repairs. With those repairs and those designs, we find out our crews, it's a little uncomfortable for our crews to do that. So we're going to contract that work out. But again, that's a way I'm trying to show that we're still working on engineering, on getting bridges done. Sometimes we have to wait to another budget year to do that. And then of course, the time period between the in-water work. So then 5 through 8 is our back walls. If you remember a little bit from last year's presentation, our back walls are really built out of railroad ties, pressure treated large timber. Well, of course, you can imagine that decays. So again, we're going to be using sheet pile, and we're either going to go down vertically or we might be going horizontally. That 2 different options we're going to give the contractor to see if we can get the best bang for the buck there. So again, we're looking at trying to bundle those. Number 9 is just a painting project that we're looking at doing. And then number 10 is actually our Deer Creek Park Bridge, which we are doing right now. As you see, because we have 1.2 million grant on that, the only construction cost is really pretty little. It's only 50,000. So that totals about 2.5 million there on our bridge project. So I do want to say that this presentation was also submitted to the Road Improvement Advisory Committee, their January meeting, and got full support for the proposals of the 22-23 CIPs. So that's the end of my PowerPoint presentation. Is there any questions you might have? Okay. Seeing none, staff recommendation is for the board to approve the capital improvement projects for 22-23. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further discussion or questions? Ken? Sorry, I couldn't see your hand. Commissioner Sarah.
I just want to say thank you to Mark. I know this is a list that we all eagerly look at to see what roads are on there. I'm still waiting for the ones from last year because I know they're on the list to do this year. So we appreciate your expertise. That's an awful lot to keep track of. And thank you for that. Thank you for your team and for being out there in the bad weather. And when most of us are sound asleep, you're out there doing some pretty tough work. So thank you to your team and thank you for the work on getting this together for us.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
And the same goes, Director Lago, your team. And I will say, I really appreciated how well you and our engineering contract manager and project manager, Greg Hafner, work together. Really, like, the two of you on all these projects, balancing them, working with interns, working with staff is huge. So great job.
Thank you very much. I'll pass it on.
He knows, but.
Great. Thanks so much, Mark. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are looking for a vote of approval, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve item I3? Uh-oh, I think we lost Commissioner Kula. At least I'm not seeing him.
No, I don't see him either. He'd be the one to make this motion. Guess we should wait for him. Here he comes. Here we go. We're waiting for you to make the motion. It should come from you.
I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I was an attendee. But I move that we approve the 2022-2023 capital improvement plan as presented by Yamhill County Public Works, with many thanks.
Okay, wonderful. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to item I4, which is consideration of an agreement between Yamhill County and Yamhill Community Care Organization, YCCO, for the Promoting Healthy Childhood Environments Grant Program in the amount of $2,265,438, retroactive to January 27th, 2022 through December 31st of 2023. And Ken has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioners, we had a request. We received a communication last evening that the CCO has asked that we hold off on taking any action on this agreement. It sounds like there's some further discussion that needs to be had with the CCO on this. And so I was going to request that we go ahead and remove this from the agenda. And then once I'm able to meet with the CCO team, and we'll figure out where we're at, and then we can bring this back at a later date.
Okay, sounds good. So we will remove item I4. Which then takes us to item I5, which is discussion of ARPA revenue replacement. And Ken, you're going to talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you. And so again, I'm not really, this is just a discussion item. I don't think it's going to require any type of formal action. So recently, US Treasury came out with some updated rules around how revenue replacement can be handled. Before, it was a really complicated formula. They came out with some revisions that allows all jurisdictions to take up to a $10 million kind of standard revenue deduction, and where you would apply, essentially we would just have that. It's a more of an administrative function. We would report up to that amount as a revenue reduction, and then we were able to move that into other areas of the budget and still support a lot of the programs and areas that the board would prioritize, just in a slightly different manner. And the reason I'm coming forward with this is having now done a couple of the US Treasury reports, the reporting and administrative burden for handling this as revenue is significantly reduced. And then it also creates more flexibility around timelines for spending the funds and how that's used, because again, it's being treated as revenue replacement, and it would move into other areas of the budget, and then we'd be able to still make funds available for various programs and be able to track that through the budget process and internal tracking systems. The reason I wanted to come and talk to the board about this is there's two categories. One, we already had with earlier discussions, we had funding I already identified for revenue replacement, which, if I remember correctly, it's right around 2.8 million is what was identified. And then another category that we had identified that was more for the internal COVID response types projects. They fell under the public health response. We had another 3.1 million. And what I would like to do, and I wanted to come back and talk to the board, is essentially, instead of having that public health response fall into this specific outside category, I would like to take that amount for those internal expenses that we had a rough list, and we were talking to departments about the types of projects. I would just like to move that into the revenue replacement. It's still well within the $10 million. All total, it would be just over $6 million in total that we would identify as revenue replacement. And then we would identify how we were going to direct and use those funds during the budget process to, again, ensure that there's, you know, transparency, where we're spending the funds, how we're moving it around, the requests, and how we're, you know, again, using the funds consistent with the ARPA guidelines. So that's kind of where I'm, why I wanted to come and talk to the board this morning and just kind of open it up if there's questions or concerns. Again, I just wanted to see if there's consensus to proceed with this.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, so just so I'm clear, there is now a quote unquote standard deduction. And we exceed that, or in our total bucket of money?
Well, our total allocation is $20.8 million. And so if this rule had been out before, the board could have elected to say, okay, we're going to take 10 million, call it revenue replacement. It'll go into the budget and we'll allocate it, you know, where it's needed as part of that. And then we would have the remaining 10 million that would be available from the various spending categories. Some agencies that or jurisdictions that received less than the $10 million, they can call it all revenue replacement and move that in, and it kind of alleviates their reporting requirements. We've already, you know, we have more than the $10 million. And so I'm already looking at, because we have $6.8 million that's going out for the water and sewer infrastructure grants. So we're already going to have $6.8 million of the tranche obligated for that grant program. And then we also have the additional $2.2 million that was identified for the nonprofit grants that will continue to proceed, that won't fall under that number. We also have the impacted industries, the childcare, and some of those other categories that I would still advocate that we keep it in the same format, and we'll just have to report on those individual grant awards on how it's being reported out. It's really what I'm wanting to do is, in recognition that we did identify funds because we did have some revenue impacts as a result of the pandemic, plus the public health response and some projects that I had mentioned in previous work sessions where I believe there are some places that I think we can make some investments. The capital fund in particular, in having some funds available for the capital strategic planning effort that we're currently in right now to, you know, look at public health, HHS, some of these other building needs that we need to address. We'd be able to take those funds and move it into Fund 40 as part of the budget process, where we can clearly delineate and show where the funds are being transferred and where they're going to be used. So hopefully that answers your question, that it's really the only change that I'm suggesting today is the public health response is taking that 3.1 million that we had identified and including that under the category of revenue replacement. I make that one-time report to the U.S. Treasury that we're doing the transfer there. And then as part of the budget adoption process for next year, I'll be able to map out and show exactly where the funds are going.
Okay, that makes sense. I misunderstood that. I thought you said 2.5 million for the cap, but at 10 million makes much more sense. So
yeah, it's a $10 million. I keep calling it a standard deduction, but it's not really a standard. It's just that they've identified that you can take a one-time up to $10 million and call it revenue replacement, and you're good.
And you don't have to go through all the rigmarole of all the rest of it. Okay. Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
No, Chair, I just think that this makes sense. It's going to simplify things, and it'll allow us, as you noted, Ken noted, there'll be a transparent process for allocating this, but it also means that we have a significant chunk of money. I'm just thinking about this capital improvement and kind of space needs analysis, and how that gives us a lot of flexibility, honestly, to make changes and improvements that we haven't really been able to.
Great. Okay. And you said we don't necessarily need to vote on anything. Would we just agree to do that? Okay.
I don't think so. If there's support for proceeding with this, I just wanted to make sure the board was informed before I started doing my work behind the scenes and building budgets and everything else. So again, you're going to see this even, when we get into the budget process and when we're making presentations in May for the budget committee, you'll start seeing those details.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we have agreement on that, so please proceed. And it looks like we are moving on to the last item, which is I6. Consideration of approval of a letter in opposition of proposed changes to Oregon Administrative Rule OAR 333-019-1025. And I put this on the agenda. I didn't put it on last week. So I put it on, but actually the rule has been submitted and approved. So this is actually now a rule that OHA has clarified that there are now permanent masking rules, particularly in regard to school settings. And the issue that, and the letter was submitted to the packet yesterday, so if you haven't seen it, it is in the packet. I believe it was emailed around as well, but the letter is a formal statement of opposition to these rules. It also addresses the issue of local control and our desire to have more local control when it comes to these types of decisions. There was opportunity for public testimony. It was a fairly short window. And as far as I could see, I believe Commissioner Sterrett was also watching some of that. Most of the testimony overwhelmingly was in opposition to making these rules permanent. And yet here we are. And so I would like to have this Board of Commissioners on record opposing permanent masking policies. I think it's unwarranted based on what we're seeing with how COVID is changing and what's going on in other states. Frankly, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I was just in Minnesota for a funeral. We went to the Mall of America. It's one of the biggest malls in the country, and nobody was wearing a mask. They're not masking in schools. They're not masking in, most of the schools throughout the country. So I'm not sure why Oregon feels the need to be special and different, but the problem is that our children are hurting from these types of rules. The Oregonian editorial board came out yesterday, and I didn't even know this, but Portland and Beaverton schools are still mandating that children wear masks outside, which is just unconscionable. I can't even believe that that's still on the books when the statewide rule for masking outside was dropped a long time ago. So this is a problem. It's going to be a problem going forward. I don't know why they chose to make this permanent. They could have made it temporary if we're watching Omicron, but they decided not to, and I think that was the wrong decision. So I would like for us to be on record opposing it. I posted this publicly yesterday, and parents have started to reach out and say that their children are actually secretly being punished in school for wearing a mask incorrectly. If it's below their nose, they're getting in trouble, they're getting referrals, they're being sent to the office, and in school suspension, they're being called out among their peers. And this kind of abuse, I consider it abuse. It needs to stop. And so that might be the next step of how we tackle some of those issues. But for now, I think it's important that we're on record stating that we don't agree with a permanent masking rule. And commissioners, I'll open it up for further discussion as well. Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this letter. Anyone who was watching the testimony last week, the week before, when we saw hours, 6.5, 7 hours of overwhelmingly supportive comments that were in opposition to this. One of the things we have to remember is that the Oregon Health Authority the legislature has sort of abdicated their role. And the OHA is a group of unelected bureaucrats that are making these rules for us that sort of skirt the legislative procedure. And I think that number one is something that needs to be addressed. But we're seeing the narrative where the wheels are coming off this narrative about masks, about typically the paper masks that people are wearing, kids are wearing cloth masks. are effectively very, very ineffective, and they are harming children, and they are making it hard for kids to learn normal speech patterns and normal developmental processes by not seeing faces. It's shaming people, and it's wholly, I believe, ineffective and unnecessary. I'm in support of this. And thank you for writing it, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. Commissioner Kula?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I would be, I don't think that it's necessary to have permanent rules. I didn't get my comments in time. I think the temporary rules were an appropriate way to go forward. I'm not going to be signing under this letter, but I would be happy to sign on and vote for a simple statement that we oppose, though it is late, too late, we oppose the permanent rule. So, do that with you, with that what you will. Look at this, Commissioner Sterrett and I are both stumbling over things we know how to say. And I was with you trying to say abdicate. But I don't, with that, yeah, I would be happy to sign on to a statement that says that though it is too late, that we oppose the permanent rule, but just with that very clear and short statement.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. I would be in favor of doing both, frankly. If that's something that you would want to bring forward next week, absolutely. I know it's too, quote unquote, too late because they did pass these rules, but I think it's important that we are on record saying that we don't agree with the nature of how this was done. So, that's something that if you want to bring forward, Commissioner Kula, absolutely. I think we should take that up next week. But for now, I am wanting to pass a letter and send it off to OHA and make sure they know where we stand. So I will make a motion to approve item I6. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes with Commissioner Bershauer and Sterrett voting in the affirmative and Commissioner Kula voting in the negative. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to public hearings. Item J, we have no public hearings today. And moving on to item K, which is announcements. Commissioners, the only announcements that I have is that our nonprofit grant portal will be up very, very soon within the next 4 days. So on February 7th, that should be up on our website. So any nonprofits that are seeking and interested in applying for the ARPA nonprofit grants, look for that on February 7th. Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. Last week, we had a discussion about the information on the county's COVID website, and our administrator had suggested that he would have further discussions with our Health and Human Services Director and then come back so we could continue our discussions about this. And I wanted to just check in with our administrator, and I had a few comments I wanted to make to just give a little information about how this might have something to do with something that happened at the state several years ago. But I wanted to just see what our administrator would suggest at this point.
Yeah, so as far as the update, I've after last week and pretty lengthy discussions that were had, where we've left things and where we're at right now, I've had some communications with Director Manfred, and essentially, she gave an overview of all of the recommendations and the additional information that came out of the discussions with the Board of Health meeting and some of the recommendations that came from that committee. And she highlighted where those changes are. There's a couple areas that I think are still pending. It's something that, as information is being updated, I know our public health staff is constantly, working on the information that's being provided on the page there. So as far as, I'm happy to answer maybe more specific questions or things, but that's where we're at right now. You know, a lot of the information that was presented, a lot of the changes that or recommendations from the Board of Health were already incorporated into the website. And then there was also some readjustment on the page itself, but I don't necessarily have a running list that I can show all the various changes, because I don't know. You know, I think Lindsay Manfred, when she made her presentation last week, she was really showcasing where those changes and what improvements and where information can be found on the website.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Question, I know we had a lengthy discussion last week and some of that information was there, some of it wasn't, and then we discussed, you know, potentially boosting a little bit more of it. Is there clarification needed from us to you in terms of what we were, you know, kind of a summary of how we left it in terms of what we're looking for? Or is that pretty clear at this point?
That was a question for me.
Yeah, sorry. Well, we had decided that, you know, we would go through you and sort of, you know, say, hey, this was great, you know, we love to see this, and this came out of the Board of Health meeting, but we're still concerned about X, Y, and Z. Do you need further clarification from us?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that, because I know that there was, I mean, because we covered a lot of territory with those discussions, and I know most of it was a lot of it, you know, with Director Manfred showcasing where we do in fact have a lot of that information that is available, how to obtain it, where it's, you know, so, you know, if there's more specific information or more specific questions that that I need to circle back with the Director Manfred and the Public Health Director to look at, I can do that. But I also know that there was, in addition to the discussions, a lot of it was also a presentation showing what information we had up on the website to hopefully answer questions, because I think there was a lot of information or a lot of items where there were questions raised about it, and actually the information was on the website already or had been up on the website. So happy to, you know, if there's more specific questions or concerns or items that I need to circle back with the team, I can do that.
Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ken. Yeah, one of the questions that I had, we had a meeting yesterday, and one of the questions I had was, folks are always asking, with the hospital data, did somebody die with COVID or did somebody die from COVID? And I'm being told there's no repository, that data doesn't exist. And it reminds me of when I went to the state, to DHS, and I said, hey, according to the Solicitor General at the federal level, Oregon is one of the worst states for overprescribing foster kids with psychiatric drugs. Can I get some data on that? And for better part of a year, they said that no such data existed. So I think sometimes when data is inconvenient, we don't have a repository for it. So what happened was we went ahead and we fixed this at the legislative level, and we're able to get a bill passed that showed that they had to start tracking foster kids and the numbers of kids that were on a variety of psychiatric drugs. So the data really needs to be tracked down. Well, one of the things those are some of the things I want to know. Did people die from COVID or with COVID, because that is a significant difference. And the other thing is, I think I'd love to see on there information that, for instance, pregnant woman would want to know. It is appropriate for a pregnant woman to know that the clinical trials won't be over until 2025. So that would be something that folks would want to know. And if I could just take a minute now, I went into the lion's den on this, and also with the CCO, and made some enemies a few years ago at the CCO level when I pointed out that we were not telling our Medicaid patients, our low-income patients that they had a choice between whether or not to accept a dental filling that contained mercury or whether they could opt for something else. This was something that OHA had allowed people to, they changed the law back in 2014, but we never told our low-income people that. And I thought, why is it that we're not giving people the information on a neurotoxin and the ability to make that choice? So it was a very contentious hearing. It took a long time to get the CCO to say, okay, we're going to let our Medicaid patients know that. And we're also going to let them know that that this is of concern, pregnant women and children receiving elemental mercury in their mouths. So there is precedent for that. Back in 1990, the Oregon Dental Board said dentists cannot talk about mercury fillings, and they put a gag rule on them. And then the Attorney General at the time came along, and with the help of the ACLU, we were able to get that gag rule removed so that dentists could say to their patients, not only is this an environmental risk, we're worried about mercury, but that it is of concern, and you do have the option. Now, after so many years and so much contention, we finally have discussion. And what the ACLU did say after all of this is that in the public debate, when there is an issue, reasonable minds, and this is a quote from when we worked on this, can differ on controversial issues. And the way you deal with that is by allowing more speech, not by suppressing speech. So the ACLU got involved in this, but in the beginning, dentists were not even allowed to tell patients that they had concerns about mercury fillings. So I'm using this sort of as the past being prologue to where we are now. There's information that there's basically a gag rule on, and unless we give people the information, like we with our Medicaid patients, I took a beating and then testified before the FDA about what we were finally allowing here in Yamhill County. I think it's important that we tell people this information. It took a long time, and I have to tell you, I did make some enemies at the CCO, but I think the bottom line is we are responsible to our constituents, especially the vulnerable constituents, those with socioeconomic challenges and those with language barriers, that they know about the health implications and how we can help them with choices.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. I agree. Knowledge is power. And especially as we're starting to see more and more of these healthcare professionals who are leaving the healthcare industry or being fired for their health status, coming out and saying that these numbers that you talked about earlier, dying with COVID or from COVID, were completely being misreported. And the reason was because there is no audit function to go back and figure out if that was really true, and because the repayment or payment for services for folks who are dying with COVID or of COVID, excuse me, the money was coming in faster, the reimbursements were coming in faster, and they were higher. So unfortunately, I think a lot of this goes back to money. But at the end of the day, we do have a responsibility as the public health authority to provide as much information and empower our residents as much as we can. And I think it's worth fighting for that. So I appreciate that. Commissioner Kula, you unmuted? Did you have a comment?
Oh, no, I was just going to provide announcements.
Okay, so just to wrap up this particular discussion, though, I mean, we submitted proposals, if you will, last week in terms of what we were concerned about seeing on the website. I'll go back and look at mine again and see, if there's anything that is still outstanding. It sounds like Commissioner Sterrett has done some of that same work, but we'll get that to you if that helps as well. Okay, Commissioner Kula, your announcements.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I just want to bring your attention to a very positive bill that's in the legislature that would provide $5 million of initial funding to the Agricultural Heritage Trust, which is a state-run or a state-overseen program that's supported by both Thousand Friends of Oregon and the Oregon Farm Bureau, which essentially helps farmers, foresters, and ranchers with transitioning their properties from their generation to another generation while ensuring that the land remains in farm or forest production. So I'll get you the bill number for next week. I apologize, I didn't write it down, but I wanted you to know about it and then offer our support as the Board of Commissioners for something that's very clearly like a multi interests bill. And then I wanted to note that thanks to the IT department, I have a fresh laptop because mine finally aged out. And IT's team, especially the ones who are getting equipment ready and showing users how to use it, setting it up for them, are just incredible. So a big shout out to the folks at IT, especially because I heard great things about Shane from the IT staff that I worked with. So I'm gonna keep it at that, but I just wanted to let commissioners know that IT has been doing really great work, and we all are online and we have our emails accessible to us. And I'm very grateful for that right now, given what other counties have been challenged by. So whew, thank you very much.
This isn't their fault, but have you traveled? Have you tried to travel with your laptop and your phone? And using Duo, it's a nightmare.
You know, I have made sure that I have my phone charged.
Yeah. Not their fault.
I'll just say for Shane that I know that there's challenges and the inconveniences with the two-factor authentication and some of the other security practices we have in place. But both Shane and I, it keeps us awake at night when, you know, we've had this conversation that every time we hear about another partnering agency or another organization that's experienced a ransomware hit or some of these security challenges, it's unfortunate. And I thank you, commissioners, for, you know, bringing up IT, because they are working very diligently to hopefully, you know, protect us from being in that situation. But at the same time, you know, that risk is out there and it's real, and they work. There's more people working to lock us down, you know, and get through that. And so we're working really hard to do that. Now, I'm public meeting, I'm not putting any challenges out there or anything like that. Please don't take it that way. I already, you know, worry about this all the time, but it is a significant threat that is out there that really seems to be targeting governmental services, and we're trying to do our best to have the best measures and security protocols in place to protect. Because again, just as you know, we also as a county, we're a service provider in many areas, and there's a lot of the community that relies on us making sure that we can deliver those services. And to have an impact like that, it's something that concerns me a great deal. And I think when we start talking about budget process, you'll probably be hearing and seeing some requests coming forward for further enhancements for our security and for the network as a whole. So
yeah, absolutely. It's much needed and appreciated. It's just, you know, my husband was laughing at me when you're traveling with 4 devices and they're all on airplane mode and you're trying to get into your county laptop. It's quite humorous.
I definitely hear you. I noted that I have a text rather than a phone call set for my.
Yeah.
I did want to also add that the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, we have a legislative subcommittee that works with Justin Martin, our contract lobbyist. We meet every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. And you're both totally welcome to join us. It would be good to just make sure that Carolina and Megan know, and I can get you the link to the Zoom for that. But it's really to keep to have somebody within COG be aware of legislation that either needs our support because it matches the priorities that the COG has set, the legislative priorities that are updated every year, or that would be to the detriment of the COG's membership. So you know, taxing districts in the Mid-Willamette Valley specifically. So you're welcome to that. I try to mostly provide just a listening ear, and then when there's something that comes up, I can send an email about it. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Commissioner Kula. Just had a meeting with Jordan Robinson and regarding Lutheran's update report to the community for what programs and services are looking like for the last year and what the wish list is for next year. And it all comes back to this, one-stop shop where we can give our constituents the opportunity to access some of the services they might need, whether it's food, housing, any of the child support type of services in a partnering with the county in a one-stop shop like they have in Polk County with the Academy building, which would be the most wonderful resource available. And just want to appreciate Lutheran and also talk about the fact that we had a great rally on Tuesday for the opening day of the session at the Capitol. A lot of folks out there who were really advocating for medical freedom issues. And then coming up on Saturday, Provoking Hope, which is an amazing organization that is helping folks through recovery in our county, are having their annual fundraising dinner. And so just a shout out to the folks there. And then again, shout out, as Commissioner Kula said, to IT, because anytime they get a phone call from me, I think they all let it go to voicemail because it's such a challenge for me to even do the basic IT functions. So thank you to them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone with additional announcements? Nope. Okay. Well, it looks like that concludes our meeting today. So I'm going to adjourn the Yamaha County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for February 3rd, 2022. And I appreciate everybody's time. Have a wonderful weekend. And we will potentially see you on Saturday night at Provoking Hope. So take care. Thank you.
Thank you.